taxpayers, comma, cannot continue.
That would do it. I think that would
Because
do
it does still show the emphasis, but it says, but you know what? It impacts everybody, and those cost shifts do impact everyone.
Yep.
Madam Chair, if we could start that sentence out by saying large and small businesses, you'd get at the business issue as well.
Yes, yes.
Or businesses, small and large.
Madam Chair?
Can I just suggest that we don't get into wordsmithing?
Yeah.
Let's make our reactions, our points, and then we'll come back with another version of it and see if we're getting at it. Julie?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's exactly what I was going to suggest, that I want to give credit to our legislative staff for starting this process earlier than in the past, so we have allowed enough time. I was going to say money. Enough time, and we can provide a redlined version, and we'll get the gist, and then we'll come back with some proposed language.
Okay, good idea. All right. So we want to make, I'm sorry, Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you. And I agree, we shouldn't be wordsmithing.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm reading this, there's two kind of policy pieces here. One is recognizing property tax as a legitimate revenue source, but I mean, you got to be appropriate about how you use property tax. And I think the position that we've had so long is just too many things are being paid for on the property tax.
Bingo.
And then also the other issue here is this varying degrees of ability and trying to get to a progressive rather than regressive way of paying for government services, where lower income or middle income people are not paying a greater proportion of their, whether it's property wealth or income or whatever, towards the paying of services. Those are kind of like the two policy or two issues in this paragraph.
Okay. Any other comments on page 1 in general? Okay.
And Madam Chair, I'm just giving you a broad brush here rather than reading through each one of these items, so you can stop me whenever
Commissioner Rettman?
Madam Chair, on page 2, don't worry, I don't have something for every page. The only one that you keep on referencing is the bipartisan budget trends and/or the economic advisors group, and yet you mentioned the joint property study group and things like this. I think it would be good if you could also talk about a group that, because you're going to be seeing the same language of some of these principles in the metro area, in Duluth, etc. So it might be wise to at least mention that, just as, and I'm just saying, because I think that shows some of that collaboration that the legislature and the governor's office is replete and always wanting to see. So I'd like to, you can think about it.
Okay.
excuse me, on page 2, number 2 is concerning the revenue side. And we are proposing a balanced approach to this, a need for long-term solutions. We want structural changes and a balanced budget from the state. Fiscal stability with a reserve for the state, which they've been remiss in having for a number of years, and good accounting practices would give them over a $2 billion reserve if they did it the right way. Inflation should be counted in both revenue and expenditure. It's only counted on one side now. And then under the last one, and number 2 is a fair tax system, based more on a progressive rather than a regressive system. And then finally, number 3, balance, is revenue diversification. It's a little bit, again, what Commissioner McDonough was saying, where the property tax system is used for what we, as our source, we'd like to share in the sales tax and income tax that the state has, and thus what our county aid is spawned from, as well as LGA for cities. So that's number 2, unless anybody has any comments on that page.
The very last sentence on page 2, equalization should not become a casualty of revenue diversification. I'm not sure I agree with that 100%. I think that there's room to do more diversification that is not equal. If a government decides to, as a policy, have an additional sales tax or whatever, I don't know that it necessarily has to be the same across the whole state. And that's kind of what it sounds like.
Madam Chair, one of the points that was discussed in that, though, it's really a hard thing to do a local option tax. Who gets the revenue? Is it the city, the school district share in that? Does the county get it all? Should it stay in the metro since it's the largest generator of sales tax? There's a lot of issues around a local option sales tax that can put local elected officials in an awkward position, having to implement those, and then the state having the option to take it away from you at some point in the future as well. So it's almost like we have to be careful what we ask for when we ask for an optional sales tax, because you get blamed for raising it, and then all of a sudden it's gone from your revenue stream, and the state then spends it in a different way. So it almost should be a statewide source.
Okay. Commissioner Carter.
Without going on record in support or not in support, I think the focus of it is that we don't want to be in a position where we have supported something that then ends up replacing what should be in fact paid for by the state. And that's the kind of lack of equalization that I think we're in danger of. So I get what you're trying to say here, and I also understand that local governments have sometimes needs and choices to fund local priorities that are not necessarily things that should be paid for by the state. So again, without wordsmithing, just to make certain that we can make the priority of ensuring that state partnership and local partnership that assures there is a level of equity across communities.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
And I'm wondering, and I know that these are all terms of art, and maybe this doesn't work, but equalization seems so rigid. And I'm wondering if maybe to say something, and what you're really getting at is huge disparities. So does it work to say large disparities should not be a result of revenue diversification?
That's a good way of stating it.
Because it allows some flexibility, but what you're really getting at is when you've got such disparity that it pits one unit of government against another. So, large disparities and equalization, because you're never going to have completely equal. Even now, if you took everything out, it's still not going to be completely equal. So just an idea.
Okay.
Okay. Any other?
The next page really came to us from our Department of Human Services, and it's really getting at the whole issue of as long as the mandates are there for these human services and they are core services, that we need to have a statement on that. And Claudia, if you'd like to talk about that a little bit.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, we have had a very similar statement to this in the last 2 years in our legislative platform, recognizing that as cuts have been made at the state, significant cuts have been in the area of health and human services, and given that nearly 50% of our budget is health and human services, we get hard hit by those cuts done at the state level. This is a broad statement that addresses the purpose of those funds that we get to cover the mandated programs. the child welfare, child protection, adult protection programs that are established to help individuals and families reach towards self-sufficiency and to help them with meeting their basic needs. And lastly, to also recognize the state-county partnership. Minnesota is one of a dozen states where we do a lot of the health and human services at the local level, and we are asking them to continue to work with us to recognize that partnership, to strengthen it, especially as we're trying to increase our efficiencies and build on best practices and good outcomes.
Commissioner Carter.
I really do appreciate the manner in which you've broken down these 3 areas of priority in particular. To mention that the second blows apart the myth that the people who come to us are unemployed, and in fact most of the folks who come to us for service or for help are employed but unable to meet the basic needs. It truly does speak to, without using the word, the need for prevention and intervention to keep people from needing higher levels of service and impacting taxpayers in an even greater way, and emphasizes the importance of that prevention role and intervention that the county plays, helping people stabilize economically so that they are not higher or users of higher levels of service. Thank you for those 3.
Commissioner Rettman.
Madam Chair, on number 1, in terms of rising out-of-home placement cost, that is in that number 1, I believe that there have been statements by Human Services that has basically lowered those dramatically. And I think that you might take a look-see to see if that's, if you're talking about per person, to make sure whether or not it's accurate. Or if it's, it's, I'd just suggest looking at that to make sure that that is accurate and verifiable, because if they say, hey, this shows this.
Yeah, okay. Good
Thank
point.
you.
Thank you. Any other comments on page 3?
The next statement page is page 4, and basically our entire package is based on this concept of strengthening both our physical and our human infrastructure in Ramsey County. And what we're talking about is the need for both. The roads and bridges types of things are physical, but the human infrastructure is the other part of our job in Ramsey County, and we have huge needs in both areas. And so our package is laid out that way, with bonding falling under the physical infrastructure, and then some of the investments in the human infrastructure are below that in our package.
Commissioner Rettman?
On that, the investment in staff training, again, I'm just raising this up for y'all to think about. Because of the direction of this board and the county manager's office, is we've talked a lot about retirements and things like this, and it talks about we reduce staff, we lose our investments, and yet there has been some ability by the county to basically not lay off individuals and keep some of that trained staff because of the retirements. I think there should at least be an acknowledgement that is grounded in facts, that even with retirements, the potential of losing the staff. I'm just concerned about when many of the municipalities, school districts, and counties are talking about retirements and things like this, and you have employees that are trained that could then go into those positions. I just want to make sure we don't lose out and have, well, but what about your retirements? You can keep all the people you're training. I just want to, I could be the only one I see Victoria